A drug shortage across the country and right here in Hampton Roads has doctors and moms-to-be concerned.
We've uncovered low supplies of one of the more commonly used medications in C-sections.
Investigative reporter Laura Geller joins us with a warning you need to hear.
We're talking about the drug bupivacaine. The higher concentrations are commonly used to numb pregnant women for C-sections. Lower concentrations are also used for pain management in epidurals. Now, a shortage has hospital systems in our area monitoring their supplies and coming up with alternatives.
Hi, little lady.
Baby Eleanor's grand entrance into this world was not without drama. In January, Mom Mackenzie Palmer went in for her checkup.
I was on the monitor for about 20 minutes and her heart rate dropped.
A C-section became necessary.
Because I was really scared. Like, I was shaking.
And then, those first moments of motherhood.
There you go. But when I heard her cry, it's like, I'm a mom.
Mackenzie remembers them vividly.
It was just amazing. Because it was like, she was just inside me and then she's on my chest. Eleanor. Monkey.
She can't imagine what childbirth would be like without that experience.
It would have made me feel sad that would have been something I missed.
Anesthesiologist Scott Pennington explains because of the shortage of bupivacaine, it is slightly more likely he'd have to put the mom-to-be to sleep in an unplanned C-section like Mackenzie's. But general anesthesia is not ideal.
There's a big difference in risk for the mother. Primarily due to risks with airway instrumentation or placing a breathing tube.
Pennington says his department at Chesapeake Regional is particularly short on the highest concentration of bupivacaine, which is also the one most commonly used.
We're reserving those for the 2 in the morning where you need it to set up pretty quick because we're not doing it because we want to, we're doing it because the baby's not looking good.
He and other doctors have been forced to come up with alternatives, like using a lower concentration of the drug when they have more leeway.
I don't want it to be mistaken that we don't have medication, we just don't have the one that is the most historically used.
A spokesperson for Bon Secours in our area says this is part of the national shortage of IV narcotics. The health system is converting to alternative medications and treatment methods to ensure patients have access to pain control. At Sentara hospitals, a spokesperson tells us the shortage of bupivacaine is not nearly as dire as other IV narcotics. They have not been in a position of needing substitutes for it. We reached out to Pfizer, which is one of the largest manufacturers of bupivacaine. A spokesman describes a delay caused by manufacturing capacity constraints and upgrades, along with prioritizing other medically necessary products. We've learned the company has finally started shipping the drug again, but full recovery of the supply might not happen until the third quarter of this year. Mackenzie says to make sure drug manufacturers truly realize the effects of this shortage, she'd tell them her story and hope they'd hear her message.
There's nothing like her coming into the world. Like, that is when you feel, oh my gosh, I love this little thing that I've never met before.
Dr. Pennington tells me in the meantime, moms-to-be can and should ask questions. He says it is reasonable to check with the hospital where they'll deliver to make sure they have enough medication. Laura Geller, 13 News Now.